Kurt and Tracy, Chris and Shelley, not so much Buzz, Matt Lucan definitely,
Yeah.
but I was hungry for this, and in hindsight, I think I got these things a little confused. My love for music and my interest in being a musician. And I think the whole 30-year deep dive into being a musician was not really what I was ever particularly good at and had a very great love affair with, but the music was, and that's really where it started. And I had that conversation with Kurt about Dead Kennedys. You know, I know he had the Frankenchrist album, and you know, it had the poster, what's the artist that did Alien? Shoot, I can't think of his name right now. But maybe Randy knows. Randy, who's the guy that did all the art for Alien? Geiger.
Yeah.
Yeah. So in that Frankenchrist record is a poster, which got the record banned. It's not the cover like you would think, but it's basically it's a bunch of male behinds being yeah.
You know.
Yeah. A whole bunch, and it was so offensive and yet so well done.
Yeah.
And so.
And it was by this artist, or was it in the?
I think it's Geiger.
Was Geiger? Oh
Yeah,
wow.
I think it really is.
Okay, man, I'm gonna have to look that up. I don't recall that.
Oh, it's awful.
Um,
And I remember, you know, like Kurt being kind of proud of it. Like,
yeah.
It's like, and I think he had it on his wall.
Yeah. It
You know?
seems like, and obviously, I never knew any of these guys, but it seems like that was kind of Kurt's shtick. Did he like shocking people?
Oh, absolutely.
I
mean, that was a thing about the whole punk rock ethos that he was extremely attracted to, and that was the conversation that caused the most friction between us. It's like, look, I hear you, give me some slack. I just need to get you guys there on time.
Yeah.
And if I put the money in the vehicle, check the oil, my money in no problem.
Mm-hmm.
But the idea that I would get something for that, you know, or that, you know, they needed to be there on time.
Mm-hmm.
It was more punk rock to be late, more punk rock to not plan, more punk rock to be, you know, confrontational.
Sure.
To some degree.
Yeah.
With absolutely everybody.
Yeah.
And it wasn't until, you know, several years later that, you know, Nevermind was successful. And I think that caused a lot of conflict for him.
Yeah. The success.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. I've read that it even got to a point where, because everybody is expecting to hear certain songs, they go on tour to promote the album, right? And they get to a point where, and I think it's the Smells Like Teen Spirit. They don't even refer to it as by name; they just call it the song. And sometimes they even skip performing the song. And and it sounds like what you're saying is that there was too much success. There was too much mainstream success.
Well, he got to the point where he didn't like the people that were paying him. You know, his actual audience. When he would look out into the crowd, and I didn't hear this from him personally, but like the last time I saw Kurt was in 1992 when I was on stage with him at the Seattle Center Coliseum. And I was over on Chris's side, standing behind his bass cabinet, and when he walked up, this was right after his daughter was born and that Vanity Fair article came out, and he wasn't in a great mood. But it was a good return to Seattle, and his dad was there. Don was supposedly at the Seattle Center Coliseum, And you know, Kurt made the famous statement to Chris, you know, didn't you get kicked out of here, or Sammy Hagar, or something like that, you know? But when he looked out in that audience, and I had youth group members that were there that night too, and I was kind of embarrassed for them because the last couple of years here in Aberdeen were the hardest by people that were now in his audience. You know, when one night we played a rehearsal at Maria's, and somebody heard about a party over in Hoquiam. And so Chris and Shelley and Kurt and I all hopped in my car and we drove over there. And Kurt and Chris and Shelley and I walked in first to this, I can't remember the name of the road, but it's on the backside of Hoquiam over there. And it was, you know, a lot of young people, probably a kegger of some sort. And it was going off, but we were dressing in full-blown, shaggy, ripped up, which was not fashionable at all. And I couldn't even get out of there. By the time Chris, was a huge presence, but he had to, you know, get between Kurt and I and all these jocks that were trying to pick fights with us. And it was just, it was appalling.
And they were trying to pick fights just because you were viewed as outsiders? Or?
Yeah. Or you know, there was
nothing, nothing
I don't even know that we
personal.
knew these people.
Right.
You know,
yeah.
and it was just like,
It's just that clique confrontation.
yeah, it was, yeah, that's it. And that's the kind of thing that I think that really inflamed him. That his sort of, how human do you have to be to be just left alone?
Yeah.
You know, you're not human, you know, I'm more human than you. My humanity's better than your humanity. And that's the language. I wish he could have articulated that, you know, because I would love to have that conversation with him then. But he was at the cusp of all of that with feminism and the homosexuality, saying that, look, we're all human. Doesn't matter what color we are, what gender we are, what we just are human. Let's figure out how to be nice to each other.
Exactly.
And the way that he did that was through, unfortunately, anger and confrontation. Is, you know, and I don't know if you ever like saw the show that he did down in Texas where there was a bouncer that was trying to pull him back onto the stage.
Was this the one where he saw a woman being, I don't know if it was being groped or something?
No, that's down in, I don't know where that is.
Yeah.
But this was where, it was somewhere in Texas.
Oh, okay.
And it's actually in Live Tonight.
Okay.
And they're playing, I don't know if they're playing Blue or Love Buzz or something. But he jumps into the audience, and the bouncer tries to grab his leg and pull him back. And he's got his guitar with him, and he doesn't want to get pulled back. And at some point in time, he starts hitting the bouncer in the head with his guitar. And he's a big, burly, you know, mulleted guy, you know. And pretty soon the bouncer realizes, I'm not getting kicked and hit by the audience, I'm getting hit by the artist. And so he starts hitting Kurt. Well, then Chris threw his bass off and went over there and got in between them the exact same way he did that night at that Hoquiam show.
Wow.
You know.
So Chris acted as the peacekeeper.
Yeah, and he did the same thing there. And we, you know, no fisticuffs were thrown in Hoquiam, but you know, he was protecting his fearless leader there, you know.
Yeah.
But I mean, that was the thing. Kurt he was utterly fearless, and he
Yeah.
would, especially on these kind of ethical questions, he would go ahead, throttle me,
Mhm.
because it won't come out good for you in the end. There's somebody here videotaping, I'm sure,
Yeah.
you know, or
Interesting.
yeah, someone's going to witness this, and they're going to see
Yeah.
this for what it is.
How badly I mean, so when Kurt was growing up, during these final years in Aberdeen, how badly did he want to get out of Aberdeen because of maybe these type of confrontations and feeling like, you know, maybe not relating to the majority of the people here? I've heard that he, you know, obviously he moves to Olympia first on Paris Street, and then down the road, he verbalizes his feelings that it's more of the same. That it's still, I guess, I don't know, for lack of a better word, still cliquey here. The people weren't entirely different, I think.
Humans can't stop being human.
Right,
Yeah.
right. Did you
Yeah,
ever
I
mention-
think that was a discouraging thing for him, you know, I think it was easy, I mean, when you die when you're 27,
Hmm.
how mature are you? You know, your prefrontal cortex hasn't even started to harden yet, you know.
Yeah.
So you become very judgmental about things, and I don't know about you, but I know those initial prejudices that you encounter in life, they scar you pretty deep.
Yes.
And so when he would first experience bullying, you know, it hit hard, well, like anybody, I would imagine. You know, you don't tolerate those things well. You don't have the tools.
Sure.
Especially, and you don't grow up in a family that has role models that help you with that emotional maturity.
Mhm.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
We can, I know I've seen some stuff recently about our society and grasping with the idea that the human body needs to have, you know, physical exercise or motion. And in the 1950s, you know, the very controversial Jack LaLanne was, you know, embraced, and by the 1970s, you know, he was like a rock star. And yet, in 1990s and 2000s, and here we are 20 years later, it's like walking and exercising are cultural norms.
Sure.
Gym memberships are a dime a dozen. Every community, even in rural America, Grays Harbor has gyms.
Sure.
But now the mental exercise, the emotional exercise, that's still cutting edge.
Mm.
And we still need to exercise our emotional maturity, exercise our emotional growth, exercise our emotional evolution, give some respect for our emotional development, particularly at a young age. Kurt didn't get any of that.
Right.
We don't get a lot of that now.
Yeah.
And so I think, you know, on one hand, I think Kurt would really appreciate where we are, but he'd be like, man, it's so slow.
Mm.
It's, you know, it's like pulling teeth.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Good observations. Yeah. So, let's shift gears a little bit to something that is really kind of silly, but let's talk about the Turtles.
Yeah.
I recently talked to Barb Schillinger, and
Uh-huh.
you know Barb.
Yeah.
she talks about how, and she was a student in Evergreen
Yeah.
when Kurt moved in to that place, and so she was gone mostly during the day. Her husband was teaching at the high
Yeah,
school,
Lamont.
obviously, Lamont.
Yeah.
And so I think the kids, and it was a large family, I think they kind of did their thing.
Well, I know Eric and Steve, those are the two
Yep.
Schillingers that I knew.
Okay.
And,
You knew them from high school, and
well, and Steve and I played in a band together. And,
Okay,
and,
yeah.
and Eric, I don't know if you've heard various things that Eric did as a musician himself, you know, like MC Satanic Scotty and those kinds of, there's, Steve had a record label called Pet That Dog, and he put out probably
okay.
stuff. I should go get the CD for you. You'd enjoy it. Or it might not be. It might be up in Quinault. Anyway.
Oh, wow. Okay,
Yeah.
yeah, I would definitely be interested. I see Barb just about every Friday. I'll run into her because she's plays with the ukulele group,
Yeah, right.
Salmon Berries, and so she's always at the art center